In your experience, what have you seen that when leaders actually do focus on themselves first, how do you see that translate into better results for their teams?
Well, one, we make better decisions, right? I mean, when you think about it and you're under that level of stress and you're not aware of it, that impacts our cognitive abilities, right? We don't make good judgments. We don't make good decisions. It impacts our ability to empathize with other people. It's again kind of that reactive mode, which comes from an emotional state. And it's why I keep coming back to really have to tap into what are those emotions that I'm having? Am I regulating myself well in the
Yeah.
way that I want to and need to as a leader? Um, you know, the I guess the other you mentioned kind of we're often working in a fast-paced environment, and I think that that impacts our ability to be effective too and to slow down and prioritize ourselves. It's you probably have seen in your work, when leaders get questions from their team members and they're often just giving the answer versus slowing down and asking questions and getting their own people, their teams to problem solve, um, to create more autonomy and independence in them in the work that they do. So in some ways, I think leaders create dependencies on themselves, which contributes
Mm.
to our our struggles to prioritize ourselves.
Yes. So sometimes it's a little bit self-induced, right? We're doing it to
I would say.
ourselves. I mean, we love so much and we care so much. I mean, I think that's one of the beautiful things about being a leader is just the heart that we have. We did a
Mhm.
podcast several weeks ago around hustle culture. And we just talked about how all of us were just going after the next thing, the next thing. And so I feel like we tend to look so much at short term that
Mhm.
we don't really even have time or take the time, as you talked about with self reflection and self awareness, to look long term. Because in the short term, okay, it's great, but it's even better in the long term.
Yeah, and I think for many leaders, we have to look at, these behavior changes take time, right? And to practice and to implement, and the results aren't always as clear as a metric, right? That you might be measuring in your job. Uh, there's a lot more nuance when it comes to behaviors and kind of the emotional intelligence effectiveness, right? The capabilities we need to develop to be strong as emotionally intelligent leaders. But it really comes down to the relationships that you have, right? Um, and how you establish those relationships and trust with your people and those around you.
Now, Kathy, how do you think boundaries play a part of this, setting boundaries? I mean, we talk about setting boundaries all the time. People are probably sick of it. But I don't know how much people talk about setting boundaries in the workplace, but how do you see that playing a part? As we talked about self-induction, like self-induced, how does setting boundaries play a part in that,
I
I think?
That's a great question. I think it's a really big part of it. And quite honestly, as I think about a lot of the, leaders, organizations I work with, I think very few people probably know what their boundaries are.
Yeah.
Right. So that means that organizations, our leaders, our family members, our friends are probably crossing our boundaries all the time. And that in part, I think, contributes to our negative response sometimes because we don't have that awareness around, gosh, someone just crossed my boundary and that's why I reacted the way that I did. So I think it again kind of contributes to the importance of really understanding who you are and what's important to you.
Yeah.
Um, and really understanding those values because in part and what brings you joy and happiness, right? Because when you don't make time for the things that are important to you, whether it's family or running or creating music or painting, whatever it might be, that is in part where I think we can go astray, if you will, and not because in some ways those are ways that we prioritize ourselves.
Right. Absolutely.
It's self-care.
Absolutely, which is so important. You were talking about slowing down earlier. I used to have a note on my monitor that said "slow down," as a reminder that, girl, you need to just slow down. And it's so helpful. And so now in my mind, I don't need the note anymore, but in my mind, I start thinking about just slowing down. We're all about strategies and giving people some thoughts and ideas that might be most helpful for them as they go through this journey. What are some strategies for leaders to really assess their own energy levels and really adjust accordingly to lead effectively so they're not in this mode of always focusing on others and not on self?
Yeah. Well, I think it starts with understanding what's important to you. It's looking at how you're spending your time. Are you spending time doing things that you enjoy? Because there is research that shows when you prioritize kind of those purpose driven activities, if you will, it actually improves our decision making and I think can increase happiness overall. So,
Yes.
we have to look at just how we're spending our time and are we prioritizing, those things that matter to us. When we talk about self-care, that is defined very differently for people, especially when you have a family. So again, it's looking at how you're spending your time. What are the things that you enjoy? How can you incorporate that into, your schedule? But what I love about what you mentioned too, the visibility is really important. It's very easy. I have a color coded calendar. Like I block everything, but when you also have to know how you operate, because if a competing priority comes up, it's very easy for me to replace my self-care time with something else
Yes.
that I feel like it, from a work standpoint might be more important. So you also have to be very disciplined. So having an accountability partner might be helpful, right? You have to build in some of those accountability mechanisms that are going to ensure that you're prioritizing, those things that will help you.
Yes. So what people might want to do is what I typically do, and that is threaten myself by putting in all caps of my calendar, don't you dare put anything on your calendar. That's what I have to do in order to make sure I don't give my time to someone else because you're exactly
Yeah,
right. It's so easy to set aside time and then just give it to someone else. Uh,
absolutely.
Kathy, you wrote a book. Um, and I want to tell us a little bit about your book, Moms Eat First, which is really in alignment with what we're talking about today.
Yeah, I think this is why this is so, really on my mind right these days. And, so the book is really it's a little bit about my story, from a parenting standpoint, but I also really wanted to take a lot of the leadership concepts that I work with clients on and share them for moms, and really ensure that they have the agency that maybe many of us forget that we have. So the book talks about 5 principles that revolve around what I refer to as the 5 R's. So reflection is number one. We have to think about what's important to us
Mhm.
and really look at what's on our plates. Number two is about rediscovering what's important. This is about opening our minds to possibilities. Number three is about resetting priorities. So based on what's important to you and what kind of change that you want, we have to reset those kind of areas of focus. Number four is about reclaiming what's important. When you think about anyone setting a goal, we always experience challenges and obstacles. So this is really about leaning into that discomfort when things get hard and reminding yourself of what you want and why it's important. And then the last one is about releasing what you can't control. So I think many times we try to, control things that are really just outside of our sphere of control. And the quicker we realize that, the faster I think we get to
Yeah.
closer to peace anyway.
Yes, I love those words. That whole control thing, you're so right. As soon as we get to realize that there's only so much that we can control, and that's okay, that will definitely give us a sense of peace. Kathy, if anyone were looking for you, where might they find you?
You can find more information about my business at talentprinciples.com, and that ends with PLES, principles. And you can find the book Moms Eat First on Amazon or Barnes and Noble online.
Awesome. Congratulations on your book. That's so, so, so exciting. Okay. Well, that was Kathy Sullivan. president and owner of Talent Principles and author of Moms Eat First. Kathy, thank you so much for such an amazing conversation around self-focused leader and just helping us to really understand that it's okay to step away from certain things and focus on ourselves first. I mean, I always hate using that analogy around the airplane about putting your mask on first, but it's so true. We definitely have to put our mask on first. So that's a wrap on this episode of What's in the News for Leaders. And a huge thank you to Kathy Sullivan for bringing her voice, her story, and just her whole smarts to the conversation. If today's episode made you think differently, take one action or start a new conversation. That's leadership in motion. And that's what we're trying to do is lead in motion, actually do the thing. Don't forget to follow, rate, and share this podcast with someone who's ready to lead better and bolder. And if you want more leadership tools or work with us, head to willownorth.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay bold, and keep leading forward. Thank you all so much for joining.